Federal agents just moved on Minnesota with everything they had, and the result is a staggering 3,000 arrests. This is the biggest fentanyl bust the state has ever seen, but the drama is just beginning.
We have brought down crime very substantially in Minnesota. We've taken out thousands of hard criminals, hardened, vicious, horrible criminals.
Yeah, about that. Governor Walz and several major mayors are now under the microscope of a grand jury. The supply of these pills is so out of control that they are basically being given away for the price of a candy bar.
A long-time Hennepin County Sheriff's narcotics investigator confirmed fentanyl is going for $1 to $2 a pill in the metro. That's down from about $20 just a couple of years ago.
People are calling it an avalanche. And for starters, the feds believe certain leaders were actually standing in the way of the law. The secret pipeline crumbles. Minnesota was recently hit by a wave of federal power that left the local government shaking. Operation Metro Surge was not just a small police action. It was a massive move by ICE and the FBI to take back control of the Twin Cities. Agents moved in fast, touching the offices of Governor Tim Walz and some of the biggest mayors in the state. By the time the dust settled, more than 3,000 arrests were stacked up. Most of these were tied to a substance surge that is currently ripping through the Somali community. It started as a simple crackdown on the streets, but it did not stay there for long. At first, federal agents were just looking for dealers and pulling pills off the street. But the numbers started to grow way too fast. Seizures spiked and overdose deaths kept climbing higher every single month. The most shocking part was the price. The cost of a single pill collapsed to as low as $1. That is a clear sign that the supply was now deeply embedded in the local community. Investigators soon realized that Minnesota had become a critical distribution hub for the entire Midwest. But the question remained, who was actually in charge of this hub? As ICE and the FBI expanded their work, they found that many distribution networks were concentrated inside specific neighborhoods. But here is the bizarre part. As agents went after the suspects, they were blocked by top Minnesota officials. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey appeared to be pushing back against the federal agents. They condemned the operation and told residents to resist or document the arrests. Local law enforcement officers say they have never seen anything like it. The federal government was trying to stop a crisis, but the local leaders were treating the agents like the enemy. This created a chaotic scene where law enforcement was facing a coordinated campaign against them. Trump even chimed in, calling the suspects some of the worst characters out there. He pointed out that many of them were hardened criminals who should have never been on the streets in the first place. But the feds were not backing down. Instead, they sent the FBI after the officials who were doing the blocking. What they found blew the whole investigation wide open and revealed why the substance problem got so bad. You can literally walk down the streets in Minneapolis and find these pills within 10 minutes. By the time the feds stepped in, the state was already in a state of emergency. It started with pills showing up in places they had never been before, not just during big raids, but in routine traffic stops and small apartment searches. All of a sudden, it was everywhere. A longtime county sheriff confirmed that the price was down to just $1 or $2 a pill. That is down from $20 just a few years ago. That kind of drop is not normal for any market. Cheap substances do not mean people want them less. In fact, it means the supply is so high that the dealers can afford to sell them for almost nothing. For years, this has been a choice market substance, and manufacturers have found easy ways to make it on the street. The federal government saw this as a major alarm. When supply spikes like that, it always leads to more overdose calls. When investigators looked at the data, one trend stood out clearly. Overdose deaths were climbing the fastest inside the Somali community, especially among young people. While that does not mean the entire community is responsible, it does mean the crisis has found a home there. Task forces were sent out into the streets to run bust operations. These give the feds a second chance to catch the narcotics after they have already crossed the border. Usually, an undercover agent acts like a buyer to lure the traffickers into a trap. Soon enough, the same names and phone numbers kept popping up over and over. What looked like random busts started fitting together like a giant puzzle. Minnesota was not just a highway stop anymore. It was a full distribution center where substances were stored, broken down, and sold to other states. Every time a dealer was taken off the street, someone else was ready to take their place immediately. The investigation is now looking for the one key detail that connects the dealers to the people in power. The economics of an avalanche. The flow of substances into Minnesota has been described by federal agents as an avalanche. The Substance Enforcement Administration reported that the state saw a record number of pills seized in 2023. It was way higher than any of the neighboring states. This was a 127% jump from the year before. This made Minnesota one of the hardest hit spots in the entire country. And get this, it was not slowing down at all. Pills were showing up in metro neighborhoods, rural outposts, and even in stuffed animals mailed through the post office. It is like people are the walking dead out in some of these areas. The DEA announced they seized 417,000 pills in a single year. That is more than twice the number of any other state in the region. Distributors are trying almost anything to get the product moving. They have been caught mailing stuffed teddy bears to addresses in the metro area to hide the pills inside. But seizures alone did not stop the supply. While law enforcement was pulling them off the street, the distributors were just sending more. They saw the effort to stop them and countered it by flooding the market even harder. The DEA says 7 out of 10 pills they seize now contain a dose that could end a life. It is just getting worse every single day. This led to the conclusion that Minnesota was a central place where pills arrived before spreading out to the rest of the region. But will investigators be able to trace the supply chain all the way back to the source? We will have to find out. What is worse is that the price went down at the exact same time the seizures went up. This stood out to everyone. That level of price drop only happens when the supply is moving faster than the police can handle it. It implies that the distribution network is deeply rooted within the local community. You can see the results of this on the streets. Police are not just finding pills at traffic stops anymore. They are seeing them in every neighborhood and every hospital report. Overdose calls are coming in at a record pace. By the time federal investigators started counting the arrests, another story was unfolding in living rooms and prayer halls across the state. The report showed that the crisis was not hitting everyone the same way. It was tearing through specific spots much faster than others. Inside the Twin Cities, one community kept appearing in the reports again and again. Elders in the Somali community are now sounding a loud alarm. They are saying that the use and the deaths are growing faster than anyone can track. These are not just numbers on a page. They are sons, neighbors, and classmates. One mother described how her son had a job offer and a great future waiting for him. He was supposed to start a new job the very next day, but he passed away that same night. Her voice is not the only one. Community advocates are showing that the disparities are impossible to ignore. Somali residents are losing their lives to opioids at more than twice the rate of other people in the state. People of color have been hit very hard throughout this entire epidemic. But what made this situation stand out was the sheer speed of it. The use in the Somali community surged all at once. When supply moves that fast, it usually means the source is very close by. This raised a very hard question for the investigators. If the substances are this cheap and the overdoses are clustering this tightly, then the supply might be hidden inside the community itself. That does not mean everyone is involved. Most families are just victims. But by 2021 in Minneapolis, the number of Black residents losing their lives to overdoses actually passed the number of white residents. Dismantling a network that is built on trust and shared language is the hardest job a federal agent can have. The silence and the stigma. From a law enforcement standpoint, embedded networks are a nightmare. They hide behind trust, language, and family ties. But silence is what really mattered here. Data specific to the Somali community is very hard to find and is likely not being reported correctly. Many young people who are using substances are sleeping outside, and they are described as being neither alive nor dead. They are right in the middle, because in many families, these issues are kept very quiet. There is a lot of stigma involved. As a result, many of these incidents go unreported. Families might say the cause was something else, just so they can grieve without people judging them. That silence has hidden the true scale of the problem for a long time. Meanwhile, the people on the streets are seeing the truth every day. Community leaders are handing out life-saving medicine in public plazas. They know that a whole generation is slipping away in ways that the official numbers do not show. Islam strictly forbids the use of these substances. This adds to the stigma and keeps families from telling the truth about how their loved ones passed away. This is not just a statistic in a government briefing. It is a mother burying her child. It is a neighbor trying to save a friend from the brink. It is an elder watching their community crumble from the inside out. By this point, investigators are focusing on the patterns that are starting to emerge. They are working with a few different theories. They want to know if the surge is being driven by a small group of very connected people. They want to know if trust-based networks are allowing the substances to move faster and quieter than usual. They also want to know if community-level access explains why it spread so fast before the police could even react. None of these theories have been proven in a court of law yet, but they are changing how the feds move forward. Federal agencies are now looking at overdose data and arrest records side by side. They are trying to understand not just who moved the substances, but how the system protected itself for so long. They are looking at communication networks to see who was talking to who. The feds believe that for a network to be this successful, it needs protection from the top. That brings the investigation back to the subpoenas. When you see 3,000 arrests and the governor gets a legal order for his emails, something is very wrong. The feds are looking for evidence of conspiracy. They want to know if public statements were used to tip off criminals or to stop agents from doing their jobs. This is a high-stakes game of legal chess. If the feds can prove that officials were protecting these hubs, it would be one of the biggest political scandals in American history. The crazy part is that the local officials say they were just protecting civil rights. They claim the federal agents were being too violent and were disrupting daily life. They talked about agents breaking windows and dragging people down the street. But the feds say they were facing rampant violence from the criminals they were trying to arrest. They say it was a chaotic scene because the criminals were being encouraged to resist. It is a complete clash of stories. On one side, you have the state government saying the feds are overstepping. On the other side, you have the FBI saying the state is helping substance lords. Somewhere in the middle, the people of Minnesota are still dealing with pills that cost less than a bottle of water. The supply is still flowing, and the arrests are still stacking up. Is it possible that the people we trust to protect us are actually helping the crisis grow? What do you think is really happening in Minnesota? Like and subscribe for more.